Welcome back, and let's continue our conversations now with the Republicans who would like to be the state's governor, joined now by Garrett Soldano. Garrett, really good to have you on the program, and as I mentioned off the top earlier with Tudor Dixon, I think my job here is to help Republican voters distinguish between the Republican candidates right now. So we know that there are a lot of things that you all agree on, and one of those is guns, but given what happened this past week in Detroit, I do want to start with your thoughts on what we can do to stem the tide when it comes to gun violence in America, which right now is an everyday horrible occurrence.
Yeah, that's one thing we have right now is a lot of bad things happen, a lot of evil people doing evil things. And so what we don't have is a gun problem. I believe we have a mental health problem, and we have to put more emphasis on mental health. We have to put more emphasis on social media when these people are posting images of themselves and saying things and doing violent behavior on social media. We really need to put an emphasis on there to prevent these things from happening. That's for sure.
Well, then, in fact, we don't see very much support among the candidates for red flag laws. That would kind of speak to that sort of thing, wouldn't it, to help us prevent, when we see signs of trouble, to be able to take action against them?
Well, the problem with the red flag laws is who's going to be enforcing these, especially with the judicial system. And we're all finding out now that these judges, hey, some of them aren't basing what the law says. Some of them are basing off their own political belief systems, and that's unfortunate. But gun control is not the solution to this. Just look what happened in New York with the evil person that shot up the grocery store. Look what happens in Chicago at every single weekend or every single day. I call it Shot-Cago now because Chicago has the most mass shootings than any other city in our union. So again, the emphasis must go on mental health. We need to get to the root of the problem. That's focusing on family, focusing on God, and putting these things back into the family unit. That's for sure.
You don't see any correlation between the fact that the United States, the country with the most guns per person in the world, also has this kind of a problem?
No, I do not. I still feel that we have a mental health problem.
Well, let's move to. I want to move to one other issue that you all do seem to agree on. But given what happened this past week, we just saw, as I mentioned in the last segment, we just saw that we're going to have more than 800,000 signatures, it appears, moving forward to try and put an abortion measure on the ballot. Most Michiganders, by most polls, show us that up to 3/4 of the state is in favor of the protections that were provided under Roe versus Wade. You don't. Does that put you out of step with most Michiganders?
No, I really feel that, I'm unapologetically 100% pro-life. And, I'm going to back that 1931 law. And what's happening right now with the governor is she's filed an injunction to tell these prosecutors to not enforce that 1931 law. And I really feel right now that's a bipartisan issue, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. We want elected officials who are going to honor that law and enforce that law. And as governor, you should not just be bypassing that because the judicial system does not make these laws. The legislature does, and we have a governor, again, bypassing the legislature, just like she did in 2020. And so if you want to change the law, you work with the legislature, or you do a citizen's petition of what they're collecting signatures right now and have that go in front of the legislature, and that's how these checks and balances work in our state government.
Well, a question that I always enjoy asking people who are running for office was one that was kind of framed by Edmund Burke many, many years ago, and I guess the question is, when it comes down to brass tacks, do you believe that it's your job to put forward your beliefs, act on your beliefs, your opinions, or is it better to represent those of the state, which is a particularly acute question on the abortion question?
Your job as governor is to govern all people, and your job is to make sure that people's rights are not trampled on. That's what you're elected to do. And so, yes, you must govern all people. And if the law gets changed, obviously, I'm going to follow that law because that's what you're supposed to do in our system of government. Yeah.
You're all in favor of seeing tax cuts for Michiganders, but it's been hard to get exact determination on exactly where the specificity would be on where we would cut spending then to make those tax cuts possible. Where do you've talked about doing an audit of state spending, which I think some people would argue is what the state budget process does every year. Where do you want to cut?
No, it's forensic accounting. That's what we need to do, not an audit, actual forensic accounting. And we need to go line by line because what's happened over the past decade, I think 50 out of our 83 counties have lost population. These are people leaving the state. These are businesses leaving the state. We need to attract those businesses back. So our population is decreasing. However, our spending under a Republican-led legislature, by the way, has increased, I think, 33%. So we have a spending problem. So we need forensic accounting done, and we need to go through every single department, and we need to find out where we can cut these taxes, and then we need to start competing with these other states, and we need to eliminate the state income tax.
Well, eliminating the state income tax would blow a massive hole in the general fund, and that also points out a question that I was just asking Tudor Dixon. Where is the fine line between recruiting businesses and creating policies that give away the farm, where they are completely exempt from a lot of taxes and a lot of responsibility, some would argue?
Well, I tell you what, if you look at the states who are taking our jobs right now, like Tennessee, Indiana, Florida, and Texas, that's who we're competing with. And if you look at Florida, I call it the trifecta. We have Florida, who has tourism. We have Texas, who has oil. And we have Tennessee, who is a business-friendly state. Well, if you look at Michigan, my goodness gracious, we can be the powerhouse of this union if we just get the right leadership and foresight to make that happen. Holy cow, do we need to put an emphasis on our tourism again? What better state to raise a family? What better state to come and visit all year round than Michigan? So we can compete with Florida with tourism. And look, we have the largest natural gas reserves or the storage capacity in the union. And so Texas has oil. We can invest into natural gas, and we can invest into long-term energy-dense solutions like nuclear. So now we're competing with Texas. In Tennessee, the business-friendly state, by cutting regulations. I've been talking to dairy farmers, and they keep telling me the same scenario. These small farmers cannot operate and grow their businesses because of the regulations. They could easily go down to Tennessee and create a much bigger farm and get a lot more money by going down there. So we need to get big government's boot off our neck. So if we do those three things, business-friendly, long-term energy-dense solutions, and make sure that our tourism, then we're going to attract these businesses back. And with these businesses come jobs, the jobs comes families, and that's what will increase tax revenue. If we don't start attracting these folks back to the state of Michigan, we're going to be dead in the water.
Try to help me understand where you think the real distinction is between you and the other Republican candidates right now that are vying for this nomination. You don't have any government or especially none of you have legislative experience, which I think you all think is a feather in your cap. But describe for me what you think is the real distinguishing point between you and the other four.
Yeah, with no political experience, I wear that like a badge of honor, like I'm sure the other candidates do. But what I'm bringing to the table is leadership. You know, I'm not backed by the establishment. I'm not bought and paid for by the establishment. I'm bought and paid for by the people. That's who I work for, and that's who I'll continue to work for, because that's where all of our funding comes from right now, is from the people of the state of Michigan. But that's leadership, and we need leadership now. We need unity, and I've been standing up against Governor Whitmer for the past 2 years and 3 months, while all the other candidates were sitting in the shadows, sitting on the bleachers, hiding in the basement. I've been on the front lines holding Governor Whitmer accountable for everything she has done and what she continues to do, and that's what people want now. They want real. And they want unity, and they want leadership, and I'm the candidate to get it done. And I'm the only candidate on stage right now who actually went up against Governor Whitmer and has beaten her. I'm 1-0. And if you want to beat Governor Whitmer, I'll be 2-0 in November.
I've only got about 30 seconds or so left, but talk to me about how we get everybody back together. We are so bitterly divided. In fact, the same governor that you're talking about has some very ardent supporters as well. How do you get us all to sit down at the same table?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's time for conversation again, folks. We got to get away from, if I don't agree with 100% that you do, then I'm going to attack you, I'm going to cancel you, I'm never going to talk to you again. We got to get away from this one issue voting and this one policy. It's time for conversation. And it's time to have difficult conversation from a variety of different people and backgrounds and experiences, so we can move not only our state forward, but our country forward. And I'm the candidate to get it done.
Getting very close to the primary, Garrett Soldano. I'm so glad we had a chance to sit down and talk today. Thanks so much for the time.